what, not for information's sake. It is mentioned that in order to promote transparency and accountability in the working of public authorities, and it is further mentioned that this is for the purpose of promoting democracy, participatory government, good governance and all that. So therefore, in implementation of the Act, or when you make an assessment of the implementation of the Act, you have to ask the question whether all the 1,000 questions that have been put to the commissioners have been disposed of by giving the information. The question is how far it led to transparency and accountability of the government. That is the question which need to be asked when you make a balance sheet of the implementation of the Act at any point of time. In this regard, in the earlier session, we discussed about what digitalization can do. And I noted a former information commissioner from Orissa pointing out as to what will happen given the digital divide. Half of India do not have access as yet to even primary education. It is just starting the game. You will recall that there was a provision in the Directive Principles of State Policy which asked the Government of India that every child in India ought to be given free primary education compulsorily up to the age of 14 within 10 years of the commencement of the Constitution, which did not happen, with the result that we have in our country the largest illiterate population in the world, and you are expecting good governance will result by digitalization. He suggested that there must be information centers where the access through digitalization can be provided to those who are not able to access information by themselves. I wonder whether the object of good governance that is there in the analyzed Section 8 of the Act, which tells you that in what circumstances information can be denied. And there are about 10, and there are other sections also, which allow a lot of discretion on the part of the information establishment to deny information. The government has made it clear in the Act itself that whereas revelation of information in actual practice is likely to conflict with other public interests, including efficient operations of the government, optimum use of limited fiscal resources, and preservation of confidentiality of sensitive information. These are objectives of the Act. The objective of the Act is to deny information when it is counterproductive to good governance. The objective of the Act is not just to give information. That is where the problem arises in deciding information. And who is to decide it? Naturally, the information commissioners. Primarily the officers, the public authorities, and then the officers at the first appellate level, and then coming to the second appellate level. And these people are to decide how to use Section 8 or Section 28 or whatever in order to decide whether to give information, and if so, what information, how soon, etc., etc. Now, this is a process in which the conventional mindset of the bureaucracy is not in tune with the spirit of the Act, nor are the officers appointed in different departments have that ability to be able to decide as to what is the scope of the total Act in relation to Section 8. And that's one point that I would like to mention when we want to make an assessment. And Section 8, some of the clauses are too broadly worded. I would like to submit 2 or 3, state that there is no obligation to give any citizen information. In Clause G, when available to a person in his fiduciary relationship, you have to determine that. It talks of in disclosure of information which would endanger assistance given in confidence for law enforcement and security purposes, very broad. or saves information from disclosure which would impede the process of investigation and prosecution of offences, talks of personal information, the disclosure of which has no relationship to any public activity or interest. Vital areas of conflicting interests, both are to be protected. The interest of the government in denying information and the interest of the citizen to access information. This is where you will be able to understand the limits and limitations of the RTI Act. This is where the importance of the whole system, the information regime, with all of you manning the system, will have to be sufficiently informed and exercised, that balancing operation. That is why I put one of my issues out of the three, the status of the Information Commissioner. Well, let me quickly move to the second issue, the judiciary. Yes, as Acharyalu mentioned, the Indian judiciary has been given very liberal interpretation to Article 19(1)A, which contains the right to freedom of speech and expression. It was also mentioned that the right to know is part of the freedom of expression. Not right to information, right to know. You know, this is where, in my earlier point of citizens not being educated, to be able to to translate information into knowledge. Where information is of no use. You must have the intelligence to be able to convert it into knowledge to apply or solve a problem. That comes from education. And if educated citizens are not there, information access is not going to help the large objective of good governance or accountability of government or participation in governance. You will find, for example, in a state like Kerala, where I come from, the panchayats are very active. That is because 100% literacy of people. They can access information and know how to use that information for accountability of government. One panchayat has gone against the Coca-Cola factory. The state government sided with the Coca-Cola factory. The panchayat got the Coca-Cola factory out, despite the state government. This is the power of the panchayats because of access to information and the ability to use that information, convert it into knowledge to be able to solve problems. Be that as it may, the judiciary's approach in the interpretation of RTI Act and its provisions when it was brought before the court has not been as broad and purposive as it was shown in the previous days when they interpreted Article 19(1)A. I have some few examples. Very quickly, I give you why I have the authority of Mr. Shailesh Gandhi, a former Chief Information Commissioner, who has done a very critical study of a dozen judgments of the Supreme Court over the past few years on RTI Act. And his conclusion is very strong, where he said, the court which earlier held that denial of information should be an exception, started justifying it, saying only where the strict requirement of public interest demands, that is Section 8, is now found justifying the denial of information unless a public interest is shown by the applicant. Whereas Section 6(2) of the RTI Act says it's not the burden of the applicant to show any public interest why he is seeking information. But the court's approach was to read into that and restrict or constrict the scope of the application of the Act to empower the citizenry. I think you must read the analysis of Mr. Gandhi to be able to understand. My quote as submission to you in this regard. The attitude of the judiciary becomes clear in a matter brought before it by the Karnataka High Court, the Karnataka State Information Commissioner, against the PIO of the High Court. An RTI applicant requested the Karnataka High Court for a copy of the rules, followed in scrutiny of classification of writ petition filed in the court. A copy of the rules he wanted, or guidelines, whatever you have. PIO of the High Court refused information, naturally on the advice of the Chief Justice. State Information Commission disagreed when it was taken before him and ordered the supply of these rules to the applicant. The PIO of the High Court challenged the order of the Karnataka High Court, which quashed the Commission's order. On the advice of the Advocate General of Karnataka, the State Information Commission challenged this order before the Supreme Court, which initially condoned the delay in bringing the SLP before the court. But at the end of it, what did the court do? The court took strong offense to the petition being filed by an information commission and declared that he had no locus standi in the matter, and on the top of it imposed a cost of 1 lakh of rupees on him. What's the message that the judiciary want to convey in the implementation of the RTI Act? Very negative to my mind. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can't question the judiciary, but it is for the people in Parliament to see that if they want better enforcement of the Act, you need to really define in such a way that the court will not go in an opposite direction case of this implementation. My last submission is about the status of the information commissioners. Again, it is a court. I think that given the powers of the Information Commission, powers to balance conflicting rights and interests, interpret it and pass a judgment on that, it's a quasi-judicial function. And it is intended like that in the Act itself. And the courts initially said that in order to be able to do that, the Supreme Court read into the qualification requirement for manning these high positions in the information establishment. The information commissions must have legal acumen and experience. However, in later judgments, they have found that it is not necessary. The court reasoned that a commission does not adjudicate a dispute between two or more parties concerning their legal rights. What else are they doing? Therefore, the functions discharged by information commissions were declared purely administrative.